Hello ladies and gentlemen, I am the Omni viewer, and welcome to Omni at the Movies, where today I'll be reviewing Black Panther. Before we begin, I've got to level with you guys. I was starting to feel a little nervous about reviewing this one. In the days leading up to the sneak preview, I gradually became aware of the fact that there was a certain climate beginning to surround this film. There was a very strong push towards politicizing it, specifically by saying that this movie is very important, and if you don't like it, if you have anything bad to say about it, that automatically makes you racist. I won't make any claims as to how prevalent the people saying these things are, but they are certainly vocal. So as time wore on, I started to feel just a little bit uneasy. I've always known in the back of my mind that even though the MCU has yet to disappoint me, they can't possibly keep the winning streak up forever. So wouldn't it be horrible timing if this was the one movie I walked out of the theater thinking that it didn't work? Considering that I am myself Caucasian, would expressing disappointment, if indeed I was disappointed, potentially open myself up to accusations that simply aren't true? It's really a shame I had this hanging over my head as I walked into the theater, because every other Marvel movie I've just went in expecting a good time, and I always had a good time, even if I wasn't necessarily blown away by these movies. Watch my unscripted reviews of Ant-Man and Spider-Man Homecoming, and you'll see I was underwhelmed, but I still enjoyed them. I didn't necessarily want to walk into one of these films and feel pressure. Well, fortunately for me, I did enjoy Black Panther. I just wanted to get all that stuff off my chest first, because I've kind of been keeping it to myself for a little bit. And I'd also like to encourage people to maybe, cut it out. I go to the movies to get away from the socio-political BS after all. In fact, I think most of us do, so how about we just let a movie be a movie, okay? Alright, enough about that. Let's get to the actual review of Black Panther, which, contrary to what some people may say, is not the first superhero movie with a black lead. If you hear anyone say that, tell them Wesley Snipes would like a word with them. Also, maybe remind them that Luke Cage is on Netflix, and that's part of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, but anyway, enough about that. Movie review. So like I said, it was good, and in many ways it was kind of surprising. Believe me, there is a lot that hasn't been shown in the trailers, and don't worry, I'm not getting into spoilers here. I'm just saying, there are plenty of surprises that await you. This is not a case where the trailers have given everything away. So I say the movie works, but what about it works? Well, every single performance is great. I honestly can't look at any particular role and think that they did an especially bad job. Every so often in these movies, you'll get a particular actor who clearly just does not want to be there, and as a result, they wind up phoning it in. People like Anthony Hopkins in the Thor movies, or Glenn Close in the first Guardians of the Galaxy. Thankfully, it doesn't happen all the time, but when it does happen, it really sticks out. Well, that's not an issue in Black Panther. Just as it's not an issue in most Marvel movies. Chadwick Boseman is actually rather distinct among Marvel superheroes. Most of the characters we've seen up to this point have had a certain level of bombast to them. In some ways, they are characters who have a tendency to act immature, and a large chunk of the movies, at least their first movies, are about them maturing. Arguably, T'Challa got all that stuff out of the way in Captain America: Civil War, so what's left to do in his solo movie? Well, now he's king of Wakanda, and being king carries with it a whole new kind of responsibility. And this is a first for the Marvel movies. True, Thor has always been in line to be king of Asgard, but that didn't actually come to fruition until Thor Ragnarok. And even then, it only came to fruition by the end, so if there's going to be anything that plays out from it, we have yet to see it. Here, he is the king, and as such, he has to act with a certain level of dignity and refinement, as well as temper his actions. It's a performance that genuinely makes Black Panther unique among the Marvel characters. Michael B. Jordan as Killmonger is also phenomenal. I think it's safe to say this is the superhero movie he'll be remembered for, and not that other one. Killmonger is without a doubt one of the better supervillains in the MCU. That is, of course, a common complaint in these movies, right? The villain is usually just an obstacle, someone who gets in the way of the hero. They're not necessarily developed all that much. Sometimes you get a character like Loki or the Vulture who have personal stakes and in some cases might even be better developed than the hero. But usually the Marvel villains don't really leave much of an impression. Killmonger definitely is one of the better villains of the MCU. I can't say too much. That would be getting into spoiler territory, and I'm not getting into spoilers here. But trust me, this is a role that is really good. Special effects wise, it's about what you would expect from a Marvel movie. The only thing that doesn't really look quite right is, okay, it's not quite a spoiler, but there's a CGI rhino that appears at the beginning, and it's very clearly not a real rhino. I was wondering why they chose to go with a CGI rhino up until the end, and again, no spoiler details, but it was for the sake of consistency. Doesn't mean it looked good. What really stands out, though, is the tone of this film. Black Panther is surprisingly serious. I'm sure you've all noticed that the recent Marvel movies have been trending more and more towards the comedic. Granted, that's part of the appeal. As I implied earlier, we go to the movies to have fun. And when the movies are having fun, that makes it easier for the audience to have fun. However, the sillier things get, the more potential there is for these movies to become self-aware parodies of themselves. Black Panther shakes things up by being a far more somber movie. Not that it's completely mirthless, mind you. There are some laughs to be had. They just aren't as prevalent, and the majority of the film is far more serious. In fact, the only other movies I can think of in the MCU that have been this serious are The Incredible Hulk and Thor. It's not to the dark and gritty levels of the Netflix series, but it is a far cry from Thor Ragnarok and Guardians of the Galaxy, let me tell you. Now, I am not the sort of person who automatically says that serious movies are better than silly movies. If anything, I think it's a mistake to reward things that are serious and dark simply because they are serious and dark. And let's be honest here, superheroes are themselves an inherently silly concept. You want to play it straight, you'd better have a darn good way of doing it. Black Panther manages that. And in so doing, it helps shake things up for the MCU as a whole. You know, it's kind of a reminder that they're not just letting one silly tone sweep over everything. Now, I opened this video by remarking on how certain parts of the culture have been moving towards politicizing this movie. My feeling is that the way in which the film is being politicized by the people is not a good thing. However, the movie itself does carry with it a certain political overtone. You've got a story that's literally about the king of a country, there's going to be a political overtones regardless of his skin color. Again, I'm not going to give too much away, but here are the basics. There's been a big question about how Wakanda will be portrayed, because there are two popular interpretations. There's the version that's a very selfish, isolationist nation that keeps all the good stuff for itself even as everyone else around it languishes. And there's the version which is a veritable utopian paradise where everything is wonderful and everybody loves it and they love everyone. The version of Wakanda in this film is somewhere in the middle of the two. It seems like a genuinely nice place to live, but it's still very isolationist. In fact, it's isolationist to a fault in some ways, and that does play a major role in the movie's plot. Again, not saying how, you'll have to see it for yourself. And the first of the two post-credit stingers, I'm pretty sure is just this side of breaking the fourth wall. You'll understand why when you see it. Now, I'm not much of a political speaker, especially current politics. The politics of the past I'm more comfortable speaking about because you have historical context and decades worth of hindsight sometimes. Modern politics I try to avoid discussing, so I'm very hesitant to try analyzing the socio-political message of Black Panther in any context, but I will say it's a far more unifying and inclusive message than the message being spread by those who have been politicizing the movie up to this point. That's just my perception, though. So, yeah, Black Panther is a good movie. Is it perfect? Well, not necessarily. There are a few plot points which are kind of predictable. I don't really like all of the hip-hop that permeates the soundtrack. And like I said, CGI rhinos. But overall, it definitely deserves to be in the upper echelons of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. As always, you're welcome to leave your thoughts on the film in the comments section below. Until such time as we meet again, this is the Omni Viewer signing off.